Sequels are opportunities to either build upon a predecessor and push boundaries, or refine what was already great and deliver that again with a stronger focus. With Ghost of Yotei, developer Sucker Punch leaned heavily into the latter approach, and the result is more captivating open-world action and unbelievably striking visuals at every turn. It doesn't try to revolutionize things, sticking pretty close to 2020's Ghost of Tsushima in general, but I don't necessarily mind when that means it can expand in aspects that matter and offer a tighter distillation of the samurai fantasy that was originally promised. And not many games in recent memory can hang their hat on having combat as fluid and satisfying as this, and it's packed into a revenge tale that makes for a more human story.
So long. Any ideas, boy?
Coming off of Tsushima, the novelty of imitating filmmaker Akira Kurosawa may have worn off a bit, but the cinematic stylings of his samurai classics still effectively seep into Ghost of Yotei's look and vibe. Whether it be the cinematography of cutscenes, the standoff before a duel, or the letterbox framing while riding horseback across the gorgeous fields of Ezo, which is modern-day Hokkaido and home of Mount Yotei, it had me mashing the screenshot button and frequently pulling up the photo mode, which is conveniently mapped to the D-pad. We've seen technically impressive worlds across Sony's first-party catalog, but it's the artistic flourishes and intentional environmental effects that elevate Ezo's lush plains, snow-covered mountains, and vibrant forests. The picturesque vistas lend Yotei its own identity, but it's the new lead character, Atsu, who gives the wandering samurai tale a more enticing edge as well. It's a story far less concerned about the romanticized idea of the samurai and instead focuses on the lengths one would go to exact their revenge. Tsushima's protagonist Jin was just fine for the purposes of that story, yet he wasn't a particularly interesting lead on his own. Moving to Atsu, who's fiery and brash, gives Yotei the kind of personality it needs. Actor Erika Ishii lends their likeness and voice, if you play with English audio, to Atsu and brings something that's more rough around the edges for a more believable character. She's stubborn and has trouble seeing beyond bloodlust, sometimes frustratingly so, and the ways the world and people push back on her kept me curious enough to see things through.
My name is Atsu.
Now, all of this revolves around a fairly by-the-numbers revenge plot, where Atsu seeks to take down the Yotei Six, a group of outlaws who killed her family when she was young, along their path to becoming the de facto leaders of Ezo by force. If you played Assassin's Creed Shadows from earlier this year, you'll notice a lot of similarities. In its roughly 30-hour main journey, a large majority of the story unfolds in predictable fashion, and gives you the runaround more often than I'd like. Multiple times, events build up to a big moment, only for it to kill the momentum without much of the plot moving forward or evolving. That's not to say it doesn't have its moments though. There are a few clever twists in a middle chapter and some bittersweet scenes throughout that had me emotionally invested in ways I didn't expect. Atsu also has a couple companions, and one of the standouts is Oyuki, both for her wisdom and as a contrast for the revenge motif. And so is Atsu's mom, who adds texture to Yotei's themes of music and family through childhood flashbacks that flesh out their past.
Let's play together.
And when it came time for Atsu to square up against one of her targets, I couldn't help but grin, sit forward for the fight, and sense that intensity of dealing a final blow. Although I wish it took more creative swings in its storytelling, it is a strong enough vehicle to carry you through what it does best. Speaking of what Ghost of Yotei does best, it's combat. There aren't many open-world action games that compel me to clear out optional content across the map just for the sake of starting fights. Movement has an unmistakable fluidity, as does the flow of each attack, ability, and parry, yet each weapon carries a certain weight that makes landing hits and those impact frames so satisfying. Without a lock-on mechanic, encounters feel natural at the expense of some frustrating mishaps with the targeting system, but because you're given so many tools, being able to weave them into your rotation or use them at opportune times keeps each fight consistently exciting. Whereas Jin had stances with his katana in Tsushima to counteract different enemy types, Atsu carries multiple weapon types of her own. She's skilled with the sword but relies on a chain sickle, spear, and dual katana setup as well as a very big sword, which creates a rock-paper-scissors dynamic against enemies. With the right weapon, you can inflict more stagger or bypass some of their defensive techniques, letting you cut through them with greater efficiency. All these weapons control distinctly, and the Kusarigama is a particular highlight. It lets you break shields, swing it around for crowd control, and even assassinate enemies from a distance on some scorpion type shit. Weapon switching is smooth and fast, so it's not as much of a pain as it may sound, and mastering the cadence of combat makes me feel, and Atsu look, like a badass. The role of projectiles is also expanded with the advent of firearms during this time period, as Yotei takes place in the early 1600s. So not only does Atsu not give a damn about honor, she also has no qualms about letting her chopper sing. Well, her musket or flintlock pistol. Sure, the musket takes forever to reload, but landing a shot comes with an emphatic punch that pierces through armored foes. And the flintlock pistol is handy for staggering or finishing off enemies at point blank. And man, does it make me miss Bloodborne. And of course the bow and arrow is still there, and it feels good to land a headshot. Then there's smoke and dust bombs to obscure enemy vision, and a flame attachment that temporarily sets your blades ablaze, all of which are effective in their own right. This is all to say that you have a lot to juggle, and no shortage of options for overcoming Yotei's challenges, whether it be an entire camp's battalion or a high-stakes one-on-one. Stealth is still a prominent part of the mix, but largely relies on basic mechanics we've seen time and again in these kinds of action games. Tall grass and enemies with their backs conveniently turned and no vertical vision, yeah, we know the deal. I won't deny that an aerial assassination or a triple kill chain feels great in the moment though. And let me shout out the Kusarigama ranged assassination one more time. Broadly speaking, there's seemingly a lighter emphasis on stealth than we saw in Tsushima, and Yotei never really pushes you hard in that direction. If you get caught, then you just fight, like, oh no, I have to engage in combat, the best part of the game, what a shame. I found teeing up as many stealth kills as possible before going loud to be the most enjoyable way to play, and it seems like Sucker Punch understood how to make that approach work well. Ghost of Yotei does spotlight duels, packaged as deadly boss fights where you're chipping away at their stagger meter and health. Here, mastering the timing of your parry and dodge is of utmost importance, and even though they play out quite predictably, I still got a kick out of connecting on multiple parries in succession, lest I get one-tapped myself. Parrying and countering is one of the great joys in games, and Yotei delivers wonderfully. I see that blue glint and I lock in. So much so that I played most of the campaign with the Bounty Master armor equipped, which disables normal parries to slightly increase the perfect parry timing window. It's high risk, high reward, and it was worth it because nothing is cooler in this series than flawlessly deflecting an attack and slicing through normal enemies Bushido Blade style. And standoffs are back, letting you kill an enemy or two or three in a timing-based EI sword swipe before going all out on the rest of your foes. It's another way Yotei, like Tsushima before it, adds satisfying variety to combat.
She can't be killed!
It was smart for both entries in the series to do away with level-based experience points and progression, relying more heavily on teaching us to improve our own skills and understanding of our toolset. Progress in Atsu's skill trees is tied to finding shrines, many of which are optional, making its open-world activities more meaningful. Unlocking charms for genuinely effective perks, getting new armor sets and cosmetics, and improving weapon efficacy are also woven into side quests. And thankfully, they often don't feel like throwaway objectives to check off of a list. Some of Yotei's more interesting skills and techniques are found deeper in these skill trees, and is a bit of a double-edged sword here. Part of me was somewhat irked at how much Yotei emphasizes optional quests for progression, but ultimately, it's a smart move. There are a few surprising turns in these quests that thrust you into chaotic duels and battles, ushering you through more of the map than you would probably see otherwise. While this works mostly because Yotei's fundamentals are solid, there are also enjoyable stories along the way, like supernatural mysteries to solve, elusive outlaws to chase, and a few cultural nods that show a bit more appreciation for the region and its history.
Say it's in Niputai Mountain. There are trails past the white flower fields.
With the latter, I'm talking specifically about the inclusion of the indigenous Ainu people, who are from what we now call Hokkaido.
You will keep me safe as I seek out these dangerous thieves.
Some of their traditions are celebrated in a way that is a natural extension of what Yotei does in certain parts of its story.
Please, said the salmon, if you don't eat me today, I will tell you the story of the arrow that pierced through a mountain.
Like Tsushima, Yotei's map is built with the veneer of discoverability, finding ways to nudge you in certain directions without plastering waypoints or markers on your screen. The wind navigation mechanic is back, where swiping up on the touchpad visualizes a wind gust toward your active objective. I also appreciate how songs Atsu learns on the shamisen, which you can play at any time to guide you to finding collectibles, or hot springs to boost health, create a little extra thematic coherence through music, as well as a way for completionists to do their thing. Although the activities themselves may still feel formulaic after a while, especially ones where you're exclusively doing Uncharted-style platforming and rock climbing, at least there has been an effort to dress them up organically as the map expands. As someone kinda burnt out on the traditionally structured open-world games, I appreciate the way Yotei expresses just enough restraint with its separate zones while maintaining the impression of a gigantic map. And letting the vibe carry you from one thing to the next doesn't feel at odds, as this is Atsu's path of vengeance that mostly works on her terms. With aesthetic options like the returning Kurosawa mode that turns everything black and white with Japanese audio, or new modes like the Takashi Miike option that ups the blood and gore by 1000%, and the Samurai Champloo-esque Watanabe mode that turns on the lo-fi beats, Ghost of Yotei has several nice touches atop its penchant for spectacle. A predictable but well-executed story takes you through Ghost of Yotei's gorgeous landscapes and satisfying fluid action. With a strong lead in Atsu as a vigilante who does not care about honor in her quest for revenge, you get a stronger lead character and an expanded toolset that elevates the principles set by Tsushima. Although the novelty has lost a bit of its sheen, the Kurosawa imitation is still strong and used to great effect, so while it may not be transforming open-world games, Ghost of Yotei is a great distillation of the samurai fantasy.
Executive Reviews editor Tom Marks here once again with Michael Higham. Michael, we've talked with you many times at this point across reviews, but for people who don't know, you reviewed stuff like Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, South of Midnight, you just recently did Metal Gear Solid Delta. You've reviewed a lot of games in this sort of action, adventure, open-worldy space. Not all of those I mentioned are open world, but you get my drift. But tell me about this. You did not review Ghost of Tsushima for us, but why did you want to review Ghost of Yotei?
I liked Tsushima quite a bit, but I came away from that game thinking, ooh, if they do a second one of these, it could really hit if they focus on the right things. Back when Tsushima came out in 2020, I was doing guides coverage for it, so I was playing that game in a way you wouldn't traditionally, because I was building guides and I have to 100% the game and write things out, strategize on certain things that I wouldn't have focused on otherwise. But with Yotei, it feels like a second chance to experience this kind of game, but at my own pace and in my own way. So I think this was an opportunity to get my thoughts out on that. And I just think that there's something about the Ghost series that was really appealing, but it was fun to dissect because of its influences from Kurosawa films, but also the type of stories that Sucker Punch is trying to tell through these games. I think that's an interesting analysis that can come out of it.
Let's talk about the genre kind of more generally. What are your thoughts or tastes around, and I don't mean this in a derogatory way, like the clearing off markers off a map games, right? The Ubisoft open world style.
Checklists.
Again, yeah, the checklisty games. Not saying there's anything wrong with that. Not saying this is exactly like every one of those other games. But what are your kind of tastes in that space generally?
I have to be in the mood for it. I think that's the case with most people. But as I have gotten older and have played more and more games, I think my tolerance for that sort of thing has gone a lot lower. I don't necessarily feel I'm not compelled to 100% a game, open world game all the time. If very rarely am I actually compelled to do an 100% run of an open world game. The thing I love about Yotei, and I mentioned this in my review, is that the fundamentals of the game are so good that I want to 100% the game just so I can keep playing it. And I feel that very rarely. I felt that with Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. Because that combat system was so good, it kind of didn't exactly matter what I was doing in the game so long as I got to play the game. And I don't feel that way about many Assassin's Creed games, even the ones that I do love. But Yotei, the fundamentals of Yotei are so good that I just wanted to keep playing it. So like clearing out bandit camps or finding all the shrines to upgrade my skill tree, like simple things like that were so fun to do because the core gameplay was that good. When there's an open world game, you either need to be, you need to entice me with the stories that I can unfold in there or the discoverability, kind of like, you know, a Souls game or an Elden Ring, or you need to have like such good gameplay that I can tune out and I'm just enjoying the game itself. And that's kind of where I leaned with Yotei, and that's kind of how I think of open world games today.
I'm curious your take on a sequel like this. Are you happy with something that's just an evolution, pretty much the same, but refined, improved in a lot of ways that make an impact? Or do you like seeing sequels like this take bigger swings, make bigger changes, put you in like more broad different settings? Where do you like seeing it, or is it just case by case?
It's case by case. I mean, the answer is cop-out answer is that it depends, right? Because you have to look at what the previous game did, and is there an appetite for more of that? I think after Tsushima, I was like, as I mentioned earlier, it's like, ooh, like yeah, if they just refined X, Y, and Z or expanded on X, Y, Z, but kind of made a similar game, like they don't have to reinvent the wheel for this, that could really hit, because it kind of goes back to the game having really good fundamentals. So like don't change that part. Whereas, you know, I think with the modern era of Assassin's Creed with Origins, it's kind of like, there's certain things I liked about Origins, but then it's like, these RPG mechanics don't really have a place in here. So I would expect that to be completely overhauled. I kind of didn't feel like going through the motions of that again. So I would want something more revolutionary from a jump to jump, which, you know, has gone through its own course. But I think it really depends on what that previous game delivered. And I think 5 years removed from Tsushima, I think that's a pretty long enough time to be like, no, I'm ready for another one of these, even if it is similar to the previous game. Because if you come out with like year after year after year, you get burnt out, right? And then so I think that coming to Yotei is like, man, in those 5 years, I can't really recall an open world action game that did exactly what Sucker Punch did with Tsushima. So I've been kind of rubbing my hands like Birdman, like ready to play this game and see what they've done, even if it is pretty similar to the previous game. Like that's perfectly fine. But like if Yotei hit like a year later or whatever and like kind of didn't refine the things that I wanted to, then I'd be like, all right, then maybe it wasn't worth the sequel at this moment. So I think given the time and the refinements they did to the best parts of Tsushima and improving that, like I think this was a good direction for the game.
Well, Michael, thank you so much for chatting with us a little bit more about your review, your tastes, all that good stuff. If you want to see Michael's last review, that was Metal Gear Solid Delta. We had a conversation at the end of that one. If you want a different Japanese action RPG adventure game, we just reviewed the Assassin's Creed Shadows Claws of Awaji DLC, so you can go check out that review as well. And for everything else, stick with IGN.